Welcome to my best campaign. Today we're talking to Adam Saraceno, whose official LinkedIn title is Captain, First Team, All Marketing at Peak Design. Peak Design, a purveyor of camera gear and bags and really all manner of systems for carrying your shit. The brand is known for great design, but even more so, it's known for some of the viral videos it's created over the years to launch and promote their products. And Adam has been the driving force behind those campaigns pretty much since day one, helping to grow Peak into a $100 million, 65-person company in 13 years. Correct me if any of those stats are wrong, Adam. He's also just a delight and a wonderful storyteller, as you're all about to find out. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for having me. Thanks for referencing my LinkedIn profile, which I update approximately once every 6 years.
Okay, so still relevant. Great. So you took a pretty unconventional path into marketing. Can you tell us your origin story?
Totally. Yeah. So my first job out of college was with Intuit, the big software company. And I worked for them for 5 years out in San Francisco. And after that, I got a degree in marketing in college. And this was kind of like a marketing project management job. And then, like, after 5 years of doing that, I was like, well, turns out I hate marketing and I don't ever want to do this again. And so I quit my job, and me and my girlfriend bought one-way tickets to New Zealand, and we lived in a van out there and traveled the world for a few years. And then in that time, my buddy, Pete, who I also went to college with and bartended with, he also quit his job in construction management and was designing this little metal clip to carry cameras around with, which at the time sounded kind of like a weird idea to me. But he launched it on Kickstarter in 2011. And within a few days, it was like it kind of really took off. And then he called me, and I was in the middle of, I think I was my chief source of income was like pet sitting for my sister in Indianapolis. And he was just like, "Hey man, do you know how to make websites?" And I was just like, "No, I don't." He's like, "Great. I need you to make a website for my company. It's called Peak Design. And we make this camera clip, and it's launched on Kickstarter." And I was like, "What's Kickstarter? What is this camera clip? You need to explain all this to me." So yeah, that basically started my resurrection of my marketing career after a several year hiatus of just kind of like digging ditches and tending bar in Queenstown.
Has marketing redeemed itself in your eyes in the years since?
I still can't like call it I cannot say seriously that I'm like passionate about marketing. But I am passionate about making funny things and making people laugh. And yeah, when as long as I get to do enough of that, it makes kind of the making people want to buy stuff part of my job more palatable.
Which the I make people want to buy stuff is another reference from your LinkedIn. And I just think we don't acknowledge that often enough that is our job, you know?
Yeah,
But
it's
we get
kind
to
of
have fun doing it.
yeah, it's like the most basic description of what I do.
So you also spend a lot of time on Kickstarter from that first campaign. So let's talk about that. It has been a huge part of the Peak Design strategy, literally from that first moment when you got that call. And from what I can tell, you're still doing it. So a few months ago, you launched your 11th Kickstarter for the new micro clutch hand strap. Tell me about your experience with Kickstarter. Are these still working? What about the platform has evolved over the years, and how have you had to adapt with it?
Well, it's definitely still working for us, and I think that's because the number one reason is it's where our community, it's where the core of our customer community still is. We launched on Kickstarter, our very first product back in 2011. At the time, it was the number two most funded Kickstarter project of all time. And it was like $365,000, I think was what that one made. And, obviously it's been eclipsed many times over by all these other campaigns. But, I think we were at the time, maybe almost like a big fish in a small pond. And after that first campaign, we a year later kind of made at the time, what felt like a super controversial decision to go back to Kickstarter and launch another product. Because back in 2011, there just wasn't any sort of track record of companies doing that. And we had just endless internal debates of like, well, we're going back to the honey hole. Like, that's not fair. That's not what Kickstarter's for. But at the same time, like the first one worked so well for us. And we knew that all the people that backed our first campaign were going to like the products that we were making for them. And so we did it, and it was also really successful, and we got zero blowback. And from that point on, it was just kind of like, oh, this seems like a relatively sustainable strategy. And the folks at Kickstarter were into it. They're like, hey, we love that you guys are proving out how like our platform can be something where you don't just start a company, but you kind of like grow and mature a company on. And so for the better part of a decade, it was every year we launched some big Kickstarter campaign to launch our next product. And that was kind of the big kind of focal point of marketing energy for the year.
You've obviously launched more than 11 products over the last 13 years. How do you decide what goes on Kickstarter?
It's not an exact science, but like in general, we try to reserve Kickstarter for our bigger, more interesting new launches versus, just launching something in a new size or color. The most recent campaign for the micro clutch is kind of it's kind of an outlier because it's a super niche product. But we decided to launch it on Kickstarter because we hadn't had a Kickstarter for like almost 3 years. And it felt like a great way to kind of re-engage with our core photography community. And in retrospect, I mean, that campaign made, I don't know, something like $1.5 million. And there's no way we would have had that kind of like reception for a mirrorless camera hand strap if we had just kind of launched it through traditional channels. So it still definitely works. Yeah.
Is it really all about connecting with that core photography community when you go onto Kickstarter?
Yes and no. I mean, every campaign we run, about half the backers are new to the brand. So it is still like a pretty big customer acquisition tool. That said, we've only really launched one campaign on Kickstarter that was kind of outside of the photography core community for our mobile products. And it was sort of, I mean, we raised $2 million for that mobile line. But for us, we were actually like, that really undershot our expectations. And it was kind of a lesson in like, we were, the photography community is, I think, overrepresented on Kickstarter. They're people that they define themselves with this hobby, and they are really into tricking out their camera with gear. They're really into their gear, and they just have a tendency to be a little bit more techie and more early adopter. So, you can't reach every community on Kickstarter, but like photo nerds, absolutely.
A lot of Kickstarter campaigns just don't make it. And you're talking about a campaign that did $2 million and that was below your expectations. Like, what are the big considerations, or maybe what is the recipe for a successful Kickstarter campaign?
Yeah, that is something we get asked. We've been asked so many times over the years. And we tried to like at one point put out this like series of blog posts that we called like Kickstarter 101 and all this stuff. And it's like the answer is always really underwhelming, which is like, there's no silver bullet. But the things that I think that if there's anything that just sort of like rings true with any campaign is being able to deliver on your promises. And that is, that means anything from just being able to ship the product when you estimate you will, or being able to, if the product is not quite finished, like, don't overpromise and underdeliver, because that is when you pretty much lose your credibility with people. And I think Kickstarter as a platform has sort of a bit of a tarnished reputation after all these years of these just high profile flops, the coolest cooler, and like all these big campaigns that just like never delivered. And I think like the average Joe is kind of skeptical of it. So yeah, deliver on your promises. And I think beyond that, it's like what makes a successful campaign is what makes any like marketing or product successful. Design something that solves people's needs that they're willing to pay for. Be able to tell a compelling story about it. Yeah, it's kind of like just basic stuff.
And video is a big component of all your Kickstarters as well, but video is a big part of what you do at Peak in general. And I think compared to most brands, you do a lot of it. Like if you go onto the Peak Design YouTube, you're putting out 1 or 2 a month. Most of them get at least tens of thousands of views, and some have millions. And almost all of them have your delightful Midwest accent on them. You really carved out a niche. Break down your strategy for video. What's a recipe for a strong Peak Design video?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, I think it's unique for a brand like us to have like an in-house video team that is 3 people, soon to be 4. And I think it's something that a lot of marketing teams outsource to like a production company. We've found it to be from the beginning. I think our Kickstarter roots have always kind of made video of elevated importance to us. And in general, we've just over the years found it's just the most efficient way to explain our products to people, which tend to be complex and feature rich, and there's a lot to say. And it's a lot easier to say that in a video than it is on, a static web page. And it's also just like the best opportunity in all of our marketing content creation for our brand to shine through and our personalities to shine through. And it's also like the funnest. It's the single funnest activity I do as a marketer is writing and participating in the production of videos. Like we just have a great time doing it. And so like all of those things have just caused us to be like, you know what, let's do this in-house and let's outsource the not fun stuff. In terms of like the recipe for our videos, like I think there's a lot of different recipes based on where the video lives and what it's trying to do. But in general, like we just try to convey information in a way that also conveys who we are as a brand. And so that often that means like featuring actual Peak Design employees in our video, having the person that designed the bag explain the bag, or injecting humor or irreverence in context where you just might not expect it. Talking shop with our customers, like talking shop on, let's say you got this kind of lens and this kind of thing. And, like really just like getting into the weeds of features and usage, or getting into the weeds of like product design and engineering philosophy and all this stuff. And then at the end of the day, it's also just like having fun making it. I think if we have fun making a video, people watching it, like we get comments all the time. It's like, you guys had fun doing that, didn't you? It was weird, but you guys enjoyed yourselves. So that makes me happy for you.
Yeah, there's always like a little undercurrent of weird, even when you think there's not going to be an element of weird. Like you've got a product designer who maybe looks serious, but then there's a surprise little bit of weird here and there.
Yes. Actually, so Joe Callender, one member of our film team, he at one of our like company-wide offsites had this like amazing quote a couple of years ago where he's like the epitome of like great marketing is to be smart and dumb at the same time. He's like, that's what we're trying to do. And that has been like, since then, that's literally been like our marketing motto. As a matter of fact, check this out. I literally have the smart, dumb yin yang sign. Like, yeah, this is, I spent $200 of my own money to put that sign up in my office. I could not expense that.
So it's a yin yang, and instead of little dots in each section, it says smart in one and dumb in the other.
Oh, yes, that's right, because this is audio.
This is
And
audio.
yeah.
Yeah. Your campaigns, so I'm a brand person, and that's the lens through which I look a lot of the time. And Peak Design, your campaigns are all super product focused, but the brand really feels like it comes through in that irreverence and in the balancing of the irreverence with the focus on really high quality technical design. Does that feel fair?
Yes, that feels very fair. It's a juxtaposition, and it's kind of a fine line to walk sometimes. One that has definitely resulted in some internal like debate from our design team saying like, hey, like these are serious products. We spent years designing it. Like, why do you have somebody dressed as a pirate explaining it? So we've overdone it probably here and there, but yeah, I think it's juxtaposing really serious design, high quality products, a serious brand that cares about serious things, with just like being goofy. And I think to me that helps differentiate us a little bit. When you come across our content, you feel, I think the we look at Apple a lot as like an inspiration in the way that they show off their products, and it looks so beautiful and clean, but there's an element of just like it's just a little too sterile, and kind of like they take themselves so seriously. Those Apple events, like it's almost like kind of a joke how they stand with like these giant screens in the background with like the number of nits, and it's just it's like, and so like we want to thread that needle of, yeah, being serious and funny, smart and dumb.
And with Apple, you know what's going to happen. Like, I don't need to watch those Apple videos because I can just look at a bullet point list of features or products that are coming out after the release. But with Peak, I feel like, no, I want to watch the whole thing because I want to see what Easter eggs and surprises you've dropped in there.
Totally. Although I will say a ton of people watch those Apple events, and since we've gotten into the mobile space, we've been trying to like we ran a campaign a couple years ago where we we gave people basically, they had to guess all of these different random things that would happen, like how many times would Tim Cook say the word trillions, and like what color sneakers would he wear, and how many times would they say the word knits. It's a thing, people nerd out over it.
Yeah. It seems like you have managed to do a good job of preserving irreverence without jumping the shark. Have you ever pushed it too far, do you think?
Well, you could be the judge when you see our latest Black Friday campaign that's going to launch soon. I don't think so. I think we've done a good job of being contextual about it. And when we have a really serious, like interesting new product to launch, like that, we launched a travel tripod a few years ago that's just like a masterpiece of engineering. And the video for that is very serious, like because there's just so much to talk about feature wise and how it's made and all this stuff. But on the other end is like a Black Friday sale where all brands are just screaming like, buy our stuff, it's on sale, where and we just kind of use that as an opportunity to really kind of just be weird and try to cut through the noise as much as possible. So there's those different ends of the spectrum, and I like to think that that we're still kind of squarely in the people still take us seriously category.
So you have a 3-person video team, about to be 4 people. Does that include you, by the way?
No.
No. Okay. So 3.5, 4.5. And it's really enabled you to be nimble and to respond to things really quickly. And I think that is one of the ways you've been able to actually produce one of your most successful campaigns to date. So let's talk about Amazon Basics.
Let's do
That's
it.
the big one. More than 4.5 million views, source of a ton of press. Tell us a little bit about the video and how did you do it?
Okay, so well, the backstory is that one day we went on Amazon and there was a product called the Amazon Basics Everyday Sling, which looked just like the Peak Design Everyday Sling, but instead of selling for like $120, it was $35, and and we were just like, oh shit. And it wasn't the first time our products had been ripped off. Like that happens all the time, but it was the first time like Amazon had done it, a giant company. And we very quickly realized like, oh yeah, they kind of, whether they meant to or not, definitely exploited a loophole in our IP. There was no legal recourse for us. And so it was really the only thing we could do was just kind of like make a video or do something to kind of like call them out. So we sat on it for a few months. We kind of stewed on it and threw around some ideas internally. And then eventually we came up with this idea of like, okay, well, we make these kind of like dry, informative product overview videos. Like, let's make one for the Amazon Basics Everyday Sling. And it'll be kind of, snarky and calling out the differences. And so I wrote up a script and handed it over to our video team. And they just like, they, with no budget or really, they filmed it in a conference room one afternoon. They got a pair of googly eye glasses that they incorporated, which they bought off Amazon Prime, by the way. And we just made this like dumb video that kind of just like called out the functional differences between the bags, but also the kind of the differences in quality and sustainability, and us having sort of fronted the bill for years of research and development and all this stuff. And yeah, we launched it, and then it just caught on.
What do you think made it work so well?
I think two reasons. I think one was we hit a nerve. We definitely just hit a nerve. Amazon knocking off our product was basically just a giant opportunity that was plopped into our lap, and I think we just did a good job of making the most of it, because it was this like very kind of relatable David and Goliath sort of story. Amazon is just a favorite to pick on. They do have some like pretty shady tactics and stuff like that, and this like just encapsulated it perfectly. And so yeah, I think we hit this nerve where press especially was just like, oh my god, we got so many press hits and so many calls for interviews and stuff. Everybody wanted to ask us about it. And then I think the other thing was like, we weren't like, pardon my language, we weren't dicks about it. Sorry to be the first person on your podcast to say the word dicks, but like we weren't like, we could have been like angry and spiteful and like, had a bad attitude about it. But I think we took a high road, and it just really, I think it came off as a much like classier sort of move.
What was the impact on sales? Like, obviously, notoriety was huge. Did you see that on the bottom line?
Nope, there was zero impact on sales. We get that question asked all the time, and people are like, yeah, did you see a bump? And it's kind of like, no, not really.
But Amazon Basics did.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? They did take the bag down. They renamed it, and then 2 weeks later they took it down. So that was a win, and yeah, it was certainly, the goal was never to sell more by that. Or honestly, the goal of that video was to blow off steam. And we were just lucky in the fact that it caught on so fast. We had big, like the higher ups at Shopify called us to like congratulate us and stuff like that. Like a lot of people noticed that video. And it just had a long shelf life. A year later, it showed up on a Last Week Tonight with John Oliver segment. He played like 30 full seconds of the video. I got to hear my baritone Midwestern, my comforting Midwestern voice on one of my favorite TV shows. That was like a high point for me as a marketer, was that. So yeah, no impact on sales, but I'm not worried about that.
Also, not a big expense. It's not like you had hired some expensive team to produce this. You all just kind of literally threw this together within what, a day or two?
Yeah, all the journalists that interviewed us, they're like, "So what was your budget for this campaign?" And we're like, well, I mean, the googly eyeglasses cost $7, and yeah, it took about a few hours. So yeah, it just kind of came out of nowhere. And I will say I'm very thankful that my CEO recognizes the sort of the rarity of like having a video go viral, and wasn't like, "Great job, team. I want another viral video on my desk on Monday at 9 a.m." Like where we kind of, a lot of people were asking us like, "Oh, what's going to be the follow-up video to the Amazon video?" And we're like, "No, we're just going to let this one ride its life out, just let it be."
Yeah. Yeah, but it really does reflect the perk of having that in-house team. And it seems like you've been able to, even though the brand has now been around for more than a decade, you've been able to keep that team really nimble, so that you can respond to moments like that. How do you do that? How do you keep your team being responsive? I know I've worked with enough big brands and in enough big brands to know that sometimes things get clunky, it's slow, approvals suck. How are you keeping this culture?
So I think from the very beginning, we've just been forced to be a very nimble marketing team. And that stems from a pretty unusual like product. I guess it's like a go-to-market philosophy that we basically have this philosophy for like, we launch products when they're ready. And so we just don't have like the timelines for product launches. They're not seasonal. They're not dependent on like the wholesale cycle. They're just really dependent on once the design team gets it to a place where we're like, "Yep, this is great." That's when we start talking about bringing that product to market. And so, yeah, the we've never been able to really plan that far out, and so we've just kind of been forced to, yeah, be able to kind of make decisions and create campaigns and contents on a moment's notice. Yeah, and that has extended to now. And I think a lot of it comes from our Kickstarter roots. We don't have, because we've been lucky to never really have to take outside investment. We kind of call our own shots, and we don't have any growth or revenue goals or targets that we have to hit, and or quarterly status reports that we have to like publish to our stakeholders. Like, we just kind of do what we want when we want. So yeah, I would say like Kickstarter has, another reason why we've gone back to that campaign, that platform so many times, is it's just afforded us this immense freedom to be nimble.
My Best Campaign is brought to you by Monday Creative. Through cultural research and audience insights, brand and marketing strategy, and world-class creative execution, we build brands that enhance human potential. Our real purpose at Monday is to seduce people into the outdoors. So we work with active, outdoor, and wellness brands that care for the planet and want more people to connect with health, nature, and movement. Find us at mondaycreative.co.
You mentioned, and this is true in my experience, it's really unusual to have an in-house video team, let alone an in-house video team that's, 4 people. How do you decide what to keep in-house and what to outsource?
It's been, it's kind of the things that we like, we do, and the things that we don't like, we try to pay somebody else to do. I mean, that's the simplest way of putting it. I also think that again, because a lot of it comes from just the importance of video over the years to our campaigns and our marketing. We've just sort of, it's naturally been something where it's like, well, we better get a video person. And if we've got too many videos, we better get another video person, I think it's also because we cut our teeth in the photography world. So like a lot of the people that get jobs at Peak Design have an interest or passion in photography and videography. So we just naturally have had a lot of in-house talent there. But yeah, I think as we become more sophisticated, the general rule of thumb is the creative and strategic elements of our marketing we like to keep in-house, and our partners help us optimize and scale those things. And certainly that's not all they do. They're also they are oftentimes like the experts that we reach out to understand like what are the trends, what's going on here. We have, I think, unique relationships with our marketing partners. Like some of them we've worked with for a decade. Purple Orange, our PR agency, we've worked with for over 10 years. Surefoot, our web optimization firm, we've worked with for 6 years. And Vulgar, our Vulgar and QRY, they're our creative ad and media buying agency. We've worked with them for 3 years. But like all these people are in our Slack channels. We invite them to our holiday parties. Like they're practically on our team. It's almost unfair to say that the Peak Design marketing team is 10 people because these other people put so much time and effort into building our brand.
So there's a lot of longevity to those relationships. And maybe one of the reasons they work so well is because they're so well integrated into your team.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Besides video, what channels have been most effective for you?
I mean, that is a great question. In what way?
I mean, bottom line, let's say, if we go back to making people want to buy stuff, and then, so maybe on the brand side and on the actual results sales side.
I mean, email and SMS has always been something that has been like I think we've really underutilized it. And B, the results that we've always gotten in that area have been way above industry averages. Like our email open rates and our click rates are sky high compared to a lot of other companies. And again, I think we keep all that creative in-house. We put a lot of time and thought into it. I mean, I still write most of our marketing emails, and we stay as far away as we can from just like templates that the ad industry, the ad agency hands you, and it's like, here's what a Black Friday campaign should look like. We almost completely ignore that stuff and just sort of do it more based on feel. So yeah, email, SMS has been great for us. I think social media has been an area that we've ignored a lot over the years because our philosophy was always, if we don't have something to say, let's not bother people with it, and yes, we get that social media is it's an important part of marketing, but it's also just like an absolute hellhole. Like it's terrible. Like spending time in there just messes with your emotions and mind and stuff. And it's like, for all its positives, it has plenty of negatives. So I think we've finally reached a balance where we kind of use it with the appropriate level of irreverence. We also have a full-time Gen Zer, Nathan. He's awesome. He manages like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that for us. And again, like we have fun with it. We show our people from our own office in there and just try to make it personalized.
There's a big lesson in there. So many brands underestimate the power of email, but the fact that here at $100 million company, the person that leads marketing is still writing emails because you see the importance of it, like that's sending a message. It is such a valuable conversion tool and such a brand tool. I believe so wholeheartedly in the power of email, and we see it in all of our clients. It is just a consistent converter and has a really high ROI because it doesn't cost a lot to create an email.
Yeah, it's old school too. And yeah, I do think it's like not easy to do it well, because I mean, think of how miserable it is to just open your inbox and you highlight all the marketing emails and delete them all. But I don't know. I think over the years I've just paid attention to like, what are the emails I don't delete and like why, and kind of applied that.
Yeah. There are some that I just will consistently open no matter what, because I know that they're going to be full of delight and good content. And I did a mass unsubscribe maybe like 3 months ago, but there's a few that I just held on to. I should put together a list of those at some point. Okay, let's look to the future. Adam, where's the brand heading next? What is coming down the line for y'all?
Lots of stuff. We have a lot of big irons in the fire from a product perspective, and right now the kind of like the big alarm across the company is like, oh man, we have like a lot of big products, and they're looking like they all might launch right around the same time. So how are we going to do this? And I'm not too scared yet. I think it'll sort itself out, but we've got roller bags in the works. We've got outdoor bags in the works. Two kind of new bag categories for us that people have been asking us for 5-10 years. We have new tripods coming out, and all of those campaigns are things that we're already kind of like thinking about who we're going to partner with, how we're going to launch them. So a lot of like, kind of those, all three of those are kind of like once every like 5 years type launches. And I think they're all going to be happening in the next like 24 months.
So potentially launching in the midst of a recession.
Yep. And during another US presidential election. But we'll deal with it.
And you've been around long enough to have weathered some ups and downs. Is your product immune to that? Do you feel the effects of it?
We certainly have. I mean, we're definitely not immune to it. The pandemic, I'd say, obviously, when your bread and butter is like bags that people take commuting and traveling, you're going to feel the pandemic, and we certainly did. But we've also have been lucky enough to kind of diversify our product lines enough over the years that like our photo specialty products, our tripods and camera gear, those actually took off because I think people like went back to their hobbies a lot during the pandemic. And, so compared to a lot of companies that either had like a terrible pandemic or just like exploded during the pandemic and then like had to go through huge layoffs afterwards, I think we did just about as good as anybody could ever ask for. We had 2 flat years, and then once travel took off again, we really bounced back. We never had to lay off a single person. And yeah, we made it through very unscathed.
How did you do that?
Again, I think we were lucky to have a diverse enough product line. That was a big lesson I think we took out of the pandemic, was like when we launch new lines of products or go into new categories, like it's a lot of effort, but it makes us that much more durable as a business. We also just like, we reacted very quickly and with extreme candor when shit hit the fan in March of 2023. We were just about to like launch our tripod. It had been launched on Kickstarter, and then it took like a year to fulfill, and we were just about to launch it, and then the pandemic happened. So like we ended up kind of like back to being nimble. We pivoted and we decided to launch our tripod, give half of the proceeds of that launch, half of the profit of that launch to COVID relief and like climate change. We then ran this enormous sale just like in the middle of the spring that we almost never do. And the sale was very much like, the video of that sale was It was not funny at all. It was basically our CEO being like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen to our company, but like our sales just like tanked and we need to keep them going. So we are dropping prices by 25, 30%. We realize people aren't in the, aren't in a situation to buy stuff, but if you are, we could use your support. Like we were very open and transparent about it. And I think that like quick response just kind of that sale alone, like kind of made 2020 not so bad for us. So yeah, just kind of, it took a lot of work, but it was also, the results were good.
So we're in this kind of post-COVID era now, the brands that managed to ride it out like you all did. What's changing? What are you seeing in marketing and in the brands that you love to follow? What do you think is coming down the line for the industry?
I honestly, so I was thinking about this question earlier, and I'm just the worst person to ask about this because I've never been sort of passionate enough or interested enough in marketing to like really be like on top of what's going on. I mean, that is literally why we hire all these different marketing partners to, I call them when I'm like, hey, what's the industry doing? I will say, I think there's certain brands that I see like popping out of nowhere being successful are ones that are just kind of like not afraid to just totally be weird and out there. Um, I don't know if Pit Viper, if you consider that a good or a bad marketing example, but they're just outrageous. They're giving away right now a Ford F-150 covered in denim, and they're calling it the Druck, like jean truck, And I see that stuff, and I'm like, wow, I guess that's marketing for you.
I would love to know how that's working for them.
I think good. I've been told that another thing I've been told is that like loyalty and customer loyalty and retention marketing is becoming way more important now, and like the brands that are gonna make it are going to be the ones that can build loyalty. And I think a lot of that has to do with how screwy digital advertising is getting, and ability to kind of track how it's going. Fortunate for us, like that's always been super baked into our business model, again, because of Kickstarter. So yeah, those are some ideas. I don't know if they're good ones,
I
but
think
they're
so. Loyalty
ideas.
being a little outrageous. What is one piece of advice that you would give to brands today? Maybe brands that are just getting started or brands that are trying to ramp up.
I don't know if this piece of advice actually works for all brands, but my philosophy has always been like, be personal and just cut the bullshit out of your marketing, because people can it's just so much of marketing is all feels and looks the same, and it's just unremarkable. And I think that we're hit with such a barrage of advertisement and messaging and stuff that you're always just going to be able to connect with people better when you're personal, when you're speaking as you, when your brand has a personality. So yeah, like don't be afraid to do that, and just don't put the like take the pedal off of making sure everything is super polished, and instead like make things interesting.
Interesting over polished. That is the thing that I think a lot of brands miss. And maybe that's why I love engaging with your content so much. Like it still looks good. Your team's super professional, but interesting trumps, perfect lighting and having the most pristine backdrop. And that is going to keep me watching over perfection. All right. I think we're all done here. Adam, where can people find you online?
peakdesign.com or participating dealers. We have a store in New York, LA, or we will soon have one in LA, and San Francisco and Tokyo. So if you're in any of those cities, you can come have an immersive brand experience.
Fantastic. Well, next time we're going to have to talk about immersive brand experiences then.
I look forward to it.
Okay. Talk soon.
Thanks, Amanda.